Hi, my name is Thiago Silva. I'm a lecturer at the University of Stirling in Scotland and a National Geographic explorer, and I study forests. And we're here today to talk about the leaf cycle and how important it is to the functioning of the ecosystem. Have you ever wondered why trees lose their leaves in the autumn? There must be something in it for them to go through that, right? And the main thing to remember is that a leaf is like a little power plant. It produces the energy that the plant, the tree, needs to survive throughout the year. But as with any sort of machinery, there's also a cost of energy to running that machinery. And when we start to approach in winter, because of the low temperatures and the lack of light, the cost of running that machinery is not worth it anymore in terms of the return that the plant gets from the leaf. So it's a better idea to shed that leaf and wait out the winter and then produce new leaves when the time comes again, when it pays off to have leaves doing photosynthesis and feeding the tree. So how does it all start? Well, the plants need a cue to know when to start shedding their leaves. Temperature is a big factor, for sure, but also the duration of the day length is an important variable, and plants can sense that daylight is getting shorter, and that's the signal to start shedding their leaves. When that happens, the plant decides to recover most of the investment that it has done in growing those leaves and removing all the chlorophyll, the pigments that are used for photosynthesis, removing all the nutrients and everything it can from those leaves before it sheds them, so it is not as much of a loss in terms of what was used to grow that leaf. And that's why leaves change color during this season, is because a lot of the materials and the pigments that are in that leaf that make the leaf function are being removed, and only the shell is being left, and that's what the plant sheds once autumn starts. And this process is so important. There's actually an entire branch of science dedicated to studying those life cycles of organisms, which is called phenology. So plants have phenology, insects have phenology. If you think about cicadas and how they emerge every few years, that's a type of phenology. And in phenology, what we're studying is how organisms interact with that seasonality in the environment and how their life cycle changes in response to the change of seasons.
Hello, I'm Sam, an entomologist and ecologist from Stirling University, and I want to draw your attention to the forest floor, where this seemingly simple layer of leaves holds great significance for countless creatures. Down here are the unsung heroes of the forest, the invertebrates, and they call this leafy carpet their home. These leaves act as a giant sponge, and they retain moisture in the soil and keep the environment below me really humid. It essentially acts like a big cozy blanket, a perfect home for things like spiders, beetles and insects. But these leaves aren't just a place to hide. They're also a feast for lots of different invertebrates. Microorganisms like fungi and bacteria break these down and make them more palatable and enjoyable for things like millipedes, which will come along and eat it directly off the surface. Other things like worms will drag leaves directly down into the soil. We call that bioturbation, where insects and worms mix leaves in with the soil layer where they can break down. Along with that process, this creates pathways and tunnels, which invertebrates use as a network to get through the forest, to go undetected by predators. It's really important to remember that this isn't just decaying plant material. It's a thriving ecosystem, essential for biodiversity and home to so many creatures. So by safeguarding the leaf litter, we not only protect those homes for lots of creatures, but we also protect forest health.
The one thing that can affect the leaf cycle is climate change. As I was just saying, part of the cues of the environment for the leaves to shed their leaves is the temperature. And as temperatures get higher and the warm season gets longer, it will change the timing of leaf loss and then the green flushing during the spring. And because so much of the ecosystem depends on that cycle as well, The leaf fall is important to recharge nutrients in the soil. It becomes the habitat for other organisms. And even before leaf fall, when the trees are producing flowers or producing fruit, that's also part of the phenology, and it's all affected by climate change. And when you start changing those timings, you might have a mismatch between what the other organisms in the system are expecting when fruits are going to be available, when the litter is going to start to accumulate in the soil, and when that actually happens. And that can be very, very problematic and can really harm the functioning of the ecosystem. And the leaf cycle is not just important for the trees. It's not just a way for them to survive, but it also works as part of the functioning of the ecosystem. So when we start to accumulate those leaves in the ground and they start to decompose, they form this mat that protects the soil. It will protect it from erosion, from very heavy rainfall. It will become a habitat for all different creatures. And this is the process that recharges the nutrients in the soil. So even though the plant removes as much as it can from the leaf before shedding it, there's still components left and minerals and carbon that are stored in the leaf, and it will be broken down by the microorganisms and reincorporated in the soil. So we also talk about how a lot of the carbon in the world is stocked in soils, but that carbon doesn't come out of nowhere. It is through this process of litter fall and decomposition that carbon is incorporated in the soil and the nutrients go back to. There's many forest ecosystems where if you look at the soil itself, it's not a very rich soil in terms of nutrients, but yet you have a lush forest on it because the forest feeds itself by shedding the leaves and the soil gets recharged, and that cycle continues every year. So it's really important to not remove litter from forests. I think when you're thinking about management and then maybe for aesthetic reasons you want to remove the leaves and take them away, but remember the way that the plants have evolved and the ecosystem has evolved is expecting that recharge of nutrients from the decomposing leaves into the soil. And if you're moving the leaves somewhere else, well, where will those nutrients come from to recharge the soil? So next time you're walking through a woodland, pay attention to the leaf cycle. See where the leaves are falling, where they're accumulating. The leaf cycle is such an important part of forest ecology that there would be no forests without it. If you like this video, please like and subscribe to Woodlands TV and enjoy the fall.